Okay, everybody. All right. And it must be Tuesday, because it's Tuesday with the Troubadours.
Dan Kerr and I are the only ones up here with a drink. So someone needs to get William... Oh, wait, Dale has a drink.
So you lied again.
Yeah, well...
All right.
I thought that was my role. William and Joseph need a drink.
Yeah, I was going to mention that. But if you'd like to run the evening, you can.
Well, that's why I sat in the middle.
Yeah, all right. Okay. So
also because I'm the best dressed.
While we were waiting, yes, Christopher was able to find a tie. He's from California and they don't wear ties there, and so he found one. He stepped over a corpse on the way into the building and was able to requisition a tie from that deceased gentleman. So we are waiting for a couple glasses of wine so we can continue. But in the meantime, I would like to make an announcement. After the Troubadours are done this evening, Joseph will go down to his book table downstairs, and he'll sit there for quite a while and be happy to. So one less glass of wine, and so he'll be there to sign books. But also some of the other tables will be open. I know the Catholic Pipe Company will be open again to help supply your evening smoking needs. But yeah, those pipes are great. I got mine last night with the Chesterton Society logo on it, and it's just great. But there's some other fine tables down there, including the Second Spring with the Caldecots and the Chesterton Review. I'd like to point out the Chesterton Review is down there, and that's the supplemental great Chesterton publication with the stuff that you might not even find in Gilbert magazine. So please do patronize our and don't forget Robert Gill. What did you want to say, Robert? Besides that they should come to your table and buy right now. Can you go down there tonight for a while? Okay, good. Robert Gill has 45 grandchildren. All right. And still counting. That's the part thing. And I knew him before he had any of them. And I'm old. Wait a minute, that doesn't follow. Okay. So the origin of the Troubadours, for those who don't know, and for those who talk about how bad COVID was, we were born of COVID. It was because Dan was running a yearly event in Fort Scott, Kansas, that subsequently became called the Prairie Troubadour. But during the shutdown, William reached out to us and said, "Guys, I miss you. I miss the discussions we had. I miss the way that the Troubadour conference would end." No, this is actually the true story. Yeah. And he said, can't we do something to kind of recreate that? And we all said, "William, we'll do anything you want, man. We're here for you. We're your buds." Yeah. And yeah, he was. But we propped him up and we got him through COVID, and that was great. But it started. We called it the Troubadour Summit, the summit with the Troubadours, and we were on every week for 5 weeks. We each took a different. That doesn't look like wine at all. That looks like something from the men's room there. And so each week one of us would give a talk and the others would react. And then when we were done with the 5 weeks, for some reason COVID hadn't ended yet, and we were still under quarantine, and we said, "Guys, we got to keep doing this somehow." So we went monthly, and it was Tuesdays with the Troubadours, and it has continued since, and it's been just an absolute delight. It's one of the things I look forward to the most each month is our gathering. But the 5 of us have only been together 3 times. This is the 3rd time. Yes, all of us, because we were never all 5 of us together at the same time in Fort Scott. In fact, we still haven't been, all 5 of us. All of us have been there, but not at the same time. Yep, yeah. And so the only 3 times, including
But
this,
in the economy of salvation, it was at the same time. Right.
yeah, you're the Catholic Answers guy. You know that stuff.
Outside of time.
Yeah. Economy of salvation. Absolutely, Chris. That's great.
It's in the catechism.
Yeah, and you're the guy who's kind of in charge of the catechism. I know.
Well, I feel like these days.
Yeah, I know. Truly. But anyways, this is the 3rd time, and all the times that all 5 of us have been together have been at the Chesterton conferences. It's 3rd one in a row, and it's a great privilege. It's just so much fun to be with these guys in person. So tonight, we are honoring, we decided to do something about Chesterton.
What?
Because I know, every time we get together, we do stuff, and then, I'm expected to do the Chesterton stuff. And I'm always happy to do it because it always is the best thing, of the 5 of us. But tonight I said, guys, we all have to do something about Chesterton in honor of his 150th birthday. And so we've each selected either a favorite or just a likable passage from Chesterton. Easiest thing to find in the world is a great passage from Chesterton. So I'm really going to look forward to see what the other guys have come up with. Maybe one of us have doubled up, and then that'll be fun. All right. So our leadoff hitter tonight is the only one of us who actually speaks English, Joseph Pearce.
Well, thank you. And because I'm the only one here that speaks English, it means none of you will understand me, but that's fine. So, I think I'm going to read what's my favourite Chesterton poem to conclude with, but I thought before that, because that will only take about 2 minutes, that I thought I would just talk about Chesterton favourites insofar as they were crucial to my own journey to the church. I say that I wrote my biography of Chesterton as an act of thanksgiving to God for giving me Chesterton, an act of thanksgiving to Chesterton for giving me God. So I just want to go through some of those key texts before I read my favourite Chesterton poem. So first of all, what drew me to Chesterton was distributism. So we just had that localism panel. I wasn't interested in Christianity, but I was obviously interested in politics and economics, and I was interested in localism, and small is beautiful. And someone said you need to read the distributist ideas of G.K. Chesterton and Hilaire Belloc. So that was my first Chesterton books I bought, were The Outline of Sanity, which is Chesterton's book, basically on distributism, and a book called The Well and the Shallows, because of one essay in there called Reflections on a Rotten Apple. So I'm very grateful for Chesterton's distributism and those 2 books in particular, the first 2 Chesterton books I bought way back in 1980. And then the other 2 I wanted to mention that I think were very important on my, should we say, intellectual psychological development was the chapter The Ethics of Elfland from Orthodoxy. This taught me about the philosophy of myth, the love of wisdom to be found through stories and storytelling, and that in turn led me to Tolkien, who's obviously another great love of mine. So, and then the final one, which is very important, was The Everlasting Man, and particularly, actually, the opening chapter, The Man in the Cave, because that helped me, as it helped C.S. Lewis, in fact, overcome the chronological snobbery, to understand that we have much more in common with our ancient ancestors than we have with any other creatures. And as Chesterton says in that book, art is the signature of man. When you go into the cave, what you find is art, and actually good art. And when I go into my office back in South Carolina, on the right as you walk through the door, there's one of those paintings from the caves in France of a rhinoceros, just to remind me that I'm in communion with the most ancient of my ancestors, and I have Chesterton to thank for that. And then to finish, my favourite Chesterton poem. This is a poem I've read many times, and I still don't really understand it. And I think it's appropriate because it's really about Chesterton's relationship with his wife. And I've been married for 23 years, and I'm still trying to understand my wife, so I can understand this. In the mystery of marriage, actually, which Jason Craig was talking about early, the only way that men and women get to understand each other at all is by marrying each other. And even then, it's a lifelong journey. So this is, it's a love letter by Chesterton to his wife, and it's called The Strange Music. And I probably, can you hold that? Probably can't see it, but I'll be squinting. Thank you. Fast. Ready? Yeah. The Strange Music by G.K. Chesterton. Other loves may sink and settle. Other loves may loose and slack. But I wander like a minstrel with a harp upon his back. Though the harp may be on my bosom, though I finger and I fret, still my hope is all before me, for I cannot play it yet. In your strings is hid a music that no hand hath e'er let fall. In your soul is sealed a pleasure that you have not known at all. Pleasure subtle as your spirit, strange and slender as your frame, fiercer than the pain that folds you, softer than your sorrow's name. Not as mine, my soul's anointed, not as mine, the rude and light, easy mirth of many faces, swaggering pride of song and fright. Something stranger, something sweeter, something waiting you afar, secret as your stricken senses, magic as your sorrows are. But on this, God's harp supernal, stretched but to be stricken once, hoary time is a beginner, life a bungler, death a dunce. But I will not fear to match them, no, by God I will not fear. I will learn you, I will play you, and the stars stand still to hear. Thank you.
Daniel Kerr.
All right, so thank you, Dale. I realized that my place up here is a place of the younger brother, who the older brothers have graciously allowed to be a part of their games and their activities. And I am the youngest of 6, and I have 4 older brothers. And they're about the same age as these men here on the stage with me. And what a delight it is to be here with them, and thank you for allowing little brother to be up here. So, as I understood it, my assignment was to think about Chesterton and to think about favorite passages, sure, what I appreciate about Chesterton. And there's a lot to say there. For me, although in the last 20 years I've said very little about Chesterton, because at least in the last little time, you know, I've had older brother Dale to be the spokesman. But when I think about my favorite, if anyone were to ask me what my favorite Chesterton work is, I would have said that it was the first work that I ever read, which is this one, The Napoleon of Notting Hill. I reread this book, and so this conference to me is a great gift, because it was the occasion for me to reread this book, which I may not have done otherwise, and I just finished it. and it's better than I remembered. It's a lot better than I remembered. And it is my favorite Chesterton work, and by a wide margin. When I was a kid, when I was a boy, I grew up in a rural part of Kansas. Who said that? Giddy up, cowboy. Yeah, all right. I grew up in rural Kansas, and I lived on a farm. And I remember one of my dearest memories. My room was on the second floor of a very large, old, white, rambling farmhouse. And I could easily escape out of my window onto the roof. We weren't permitted to do this, but we did it anyway. And I did this, and I frequently climbed up to the tallest point on my roof. And the game that I engaged in was a game of defending the home. I had my little gun, whether it was a wooden gun or something a little bit more lifelike. But I would take my gun, I would crawl out onto the roof, climb up to the tallest point, and I would imagine that my home, which was my castle, was under siege, and I was meant to defend it. And this was my favorite game as a kid. I'm the youngest by 6 years, and so in some ways I was like an only child. And so I spent a lot of time doing these sorts of things. I was always cognizant and wary of the North. The North held what we called Colors Woods. Colors Woods, a deep and dark place, a place of mystery. Surely this would be where the enemy came from. And so all of my attentions were to the North, and I thought about how I would defend my place, defend this house. And indeed, that sentiment that I think most boys have, the sentiment of loving and wanting to protect one's own little piece of ground that has nurtured one through his early years, I think is a normal and a very healthy thing. And so as you grow a little bit older and you begin reading books, sometimes you read a book that puts into perfect expression and crystallizes all of those instincts that you had, all those good instincts that you had as a boy. And for me, that instinct, what Chesterton would call the patriotic instinct, not for a large abstract empire, but for one's own piece of ground, one's patria, the fatherland, where one's father was and where one grew up. I had that instinct. And when I read, probably at about the age of 18 or 19, The Napoleon of Notting Hill, I found a most beautiful and eloquent expression of that. And so I was delighted earlier to listen in on the panel about localism. And I could be wrong, and Dale would be glad to correct me, but I don't know if there's a better expression of localism that came from Chesterton than the Napoleon of Notting Hill. I don't think there is. All right, solidarity, brother. Thank you so much. I'll read a couple passages. Here we meet for the first time in his full glory the character of Adam Wayne. He says the following. I can't set this up at length. It'll just simply take too long. Um, Adam Wayne, the hero of Notting Hill, a patriot, says the following. "Only feeling, sire," answered the provost. "I was born like other men in a spot of the earth which I loved because I had played boys' games there and fallen in love and talked with my friends through nights that were nights of the gods. And I feel the riddle. These little gardens where we told our loves, these streets where we brought out our dead, why should they be commonplace? Why should they be absurd? Why should it be grotesque to say that a pillar box is poetic, when for a year I could not see a red pillar box against the yellow evening in a certain street without being racked with something of which God keeps the secret, but which is stronger than sorrow or joy? Why should anyone be able to raise a laugh by saying, 'The cause of Notting Hill'? Notting Hill, where thousands of immortal spirits blaze with alternate hope and fear." And I turn to the end, the last chapter, called Two Voices. Here's Adam Wayne at the end of the book. "If all things are always the same, it is because they are always heroic. If all things are always the same, it is because they are always new. To each man, one soul only is given. To each soul only is given a little power. The power at some moments to outgrow and swallow up the stars. If age after age that power comes upon men, whatever gives it to them is great. Whatever makes men feel old is mean. An empire or a skinflint shop. Whatever makes men feel young is great. A great war or a love story. And in the darkest of the books of God, there is written a truth that is also a riddle. It is of the new things that men tire, of fashions and proposals and improvements and change. But it is the old things that startle and intoxicate. It is the old things that are young. There is no skeptic who does not feel that many have doubted before. There is no rich and fickle man who does not feel that all his novelties are ancient. There is no worshiper of change who does not feel upon his neck the vast weight of the weariness of the universe. But we who do the old things are fed by nature with a perpetual infancy. No man who is in love thinks that anyone has been in love before. No woman who has a child thinks that there have been such things as children. No people that fight for their own city are haunted with the burden of broken empires. Yes, O dark voice, the world is always the same, for it is always unexpected.
Thank you. Absolutely beautiful. Thank you, Daniel. Christopher, it's yours.
Dale asked us to select our favorite, if I recall. Dale has memories of how things went. My memory of this was Dale asked us to select our favorite Chesterton passage. This is I mean, imagine trying to pick your favorite Warren Zevon song, right? Well in the Shallows was in my finals, yeah. As was Napoleon of Notting Hill. I'm glad, by the way, that my friend Dan Kerr has figured out his place in this group, because I'm still struggling too. Yeah. My favorite Chesterton passage, I think known to many of you, takes about 15 minutes to recite. And Dale said, we only have 5. I've come to Chesterton in so many indirect ways, and I thank Dale for a lot of it. I made that little joke about Brady this morning, but all the great lines I know in Chesterton I know from Dale, and of course that inspired more reading. But 2 decades ago, I don't even know, a long time ago, Alan and my colleague Tom Fleming and I were doing a program in Sicily. And he said, Chris, you should do a talk on the Punic Wars. Tom was great at this. Because I'd been in the Marines, he said, we're going to France. Chris, you should do a talk on Joan of Arc, right? So, and all the stories that I like to tell have kind of come to me that way. I was in Milwaukee with a dear friend of mine, known to some of you, Sharif Said. He's a convert from Islam, baptized on October 7th, many, many years ago. And he's a policeman in West Allis, a detective, a suburb of Milwaukee. At the time, he'd been a student of Bob Wyer's, and yours, yeah. And Sharif was teaching Latin at this little school, and I'd gone up there to do the Lepanto talk, and so he was also running the gym class, and he said, I read somewhere that it's good for children to yell, and so he says, I'm trying to think of things for them to yell, and so I've been getting them to yell, "Viva Cristo Rey," and he says, you know where that's from? And I said, oh, you know, the Mexicans. He said, well, the Cristero War, Miguel Pro. And it's just like, I didn't know that story, but it came to me. And so now, so all these stories have kind of found me. By the way, this is how you think you have a devotion to a saint? That saint found you. It did. I was in a bookstore in Milwaukee, and I found Sigurd Undset's biography of Catherine of Siena. I had no idea she'd written about it. It was crazy, but that's how she found me, and I have this dear devotion to her now. So all the Chesterton I know sort of has found me. So we're going to Sicily. We're doing a program in Sicily. Tom Fleming said, you need to talk on the Punic Wars, and because I'd long known Dale by that point and long known Chesterton. Said, what did Chesterton have to say about the Punic Wars? And the thing that he says about them is it's at the very heart of storytelling. It's at the very heart of history. And I've said this tons of times, but there's no other understanding of history since the Incarnation except this. All history tends towards it before, and after, all history comes out of it. And if you go to midnight mass, or if you prefer the old rite, and you say the office of Christmas Eve, you know this passage from the Martyrology, from the Roman Martyrology. in the such and such year of the Olympiad, etc., etc., in the reign of Caesar Augustus, all the world being at peace. All the world being at peace. And so I can't go to Mass on Christmas Eve at midnight without thinking of this passage in the Everlasting Man. The gods had risen again, and the demons had been defeated after all. But they had been defeated by the defeated and almost defeated by the dead. Nobody understands the romance of Rome and why she rose afterwards to a representative leadership that seemed almost faded and fundamentally natural. Who does not keep in mind the agony of horror and humiliation through which she had continued to testify to the sanity that is the soul of Europe? She came to stand alone in the midst of an empire because she had once stood alone in the midst of a ruin and a waste. After that, all men knew in their hearts that she had been representative of mankind, even when she was rejected of men. And there fell on her the shadow from a shining and as yet invisible light, and the burden of things to be. It is not for us to guess in what manner or moment the mercy of God might, in any case, have rescued the world, but it is certain that the struggle which established Christendom would have been very different if there had been an empire of Carthage instead of an empire of Rome. We have to thank the patience of the Punic Wars if, in after ages, divine things descended at least upon human things and not inhuman. Europe evolved into its own vices and its own impotence, as will be suggested on another page. But the worst into which it evolved was not like what it had escaped. Can any man in his senses compare the great wooden doll whom the children expected to eat a little bit of the dinner with the great idol who would have been expected to eat the children? That is the measure of how far the world went astray compared with how far it might have gone astray. If the Romans were ruthless, it was, in a true sense, to an enemy, and certainly not merely a rival. They remembered not trade routes and regulations, but the faces of sneering men, and hated the hateful soul of Carthage. And we owe them something if we never needed to cut down the groves of Venus, exactly as men cut down the groves of Baal. We owe it partly to their harshness that our thoughts of our human past are not wholly harsh. If the passage from heathenry to Christianity was a bridge as well as a breach, we owe it to those who kept that heathenry human. If, after all these ages, we are in some sense at peace with paganism and can think more kindly of our fathers, it is well to remember the things that were and the things that might have been. For this reason alone, we can take lightly the load of antiquity and need not shudder at a nymph on a fountain or a Cupid on a Valentine. Laughter and sadness link us with things long passed away and remembered with dishonor. And we can see, not altogether without tenderness, the twilight sinking around this Sabine farm, and hear the household gods rejoice when Catullus comes home Sirmio. Delata est Carthago. May I say before Dale cuts me off, if you have not purchased a copy, Dale has a great legacy, the Chesterton Society, from when he first stepped out of the boat, to use his phrase, to the school network that he has launched. And I don't know, we'll know long after he's dead. This edition of Everlasting Man 500 years from now, people will say, like J.B. Bury, right, with Gibbon. Yeah. Which edition of Everlasting Man? Oh, the Ahlquist edition. Get a copy.
Thank you, brother. God bless you.
Oh, wait. Dale inscribed this to me. To Chris Check with great admiration and fraternal clarity. Oh, charity.
Did I really say that?
Yeah. Fraternal charity.
No, that says
It
clarity.
says clarity. Okay, all right.
All right. Oh, well, God bless you. Thank you so much. And Word on Fire sent Chris a copy of the book before they sent it to me, which I thought was fine. All right. William.
Well, here we are, the Troubadours. Thank you for supporting me as my therapy crowd for the Troubadours extended support session. I don't know about it. This is an interesting phenomenon. 15 or 16 years ago, I was faced with a very difficult choice of leaving a institution where I was very happy working, a place I was very happy living, and going to New England, where I currently am, which is where my father and his side of the family is from. And one of my close friends knew I was moving towards leaving Virginia and going to New England. And he said, as a good Virginian would, "Why are you thinking of doing this?" And I said, because when I'm there, I hear in the voice of the men who speak the voice of my father and his brothers and my grandparents. And that was said spontaneously. That sounds nice, but I didn't. I mean, that was just kind of said because truly I had this experience of sitting trying to discern what to do in a coffee shop, and I spent about 2 hours listening to people buy coffee and talk, and the way they spoke deeply moved me. And to be honest, one of the things that I most love about continuing with the Troubadours is I just like hearing my friends. They may say rubbish, but I like hearing their voices. We're all from different places in the world, the English-speaking world, but I like hearing the voices of my friends. And all of us, I think I speak for all of us, I will assume I speak for all of us. How many years did you say we've been going at this?
Since COVID.
Since COVID, since 2020, I guess. Probably 5 months, 6 months, whatever it was in. I'm sure all of us began when we would get that email that said, remember, it's this Tuesday. Probably all of us thought, I wonder when it's going to actually stop, because there's a lot going on in life that I have to displace or that maybe I should be doing rather than this. And then maybe 1 minute before or 5 minutes in to the show, it became crystal clear. Actually, this is just, who cares? This is wonderful. The who cares, by the way, is addressed to the fact that at a certain point we lost track completely on whether anyone on the planet was watching. When we started, it was very much this, the thing second to supporting me was people are depressed, we need to do something good. And so there was this feedback loop where we could see how many people were logged on. So at a certain point, I can't remember, that there's technological failure because all of us don't understand how computers work. And it's been 3.5 years at least since we have no idea. I'm assuming, because when I come to the Chesterton conference and people say, oh, I like the Troubadours. Oh, my husband and I, my wife and I, it's a date. We make a drink and we watch the Troubadours. It's kind of an extraordinary thing. So I think we should have an annual vote. Should we stop this year? Joseph is thinking, damn it. So, yeah, Dale did say, and I actually did remember that Dale said, pick your favorite Chesterton passage. I'm the kind of person that reacts to what's your favorite by breaking out in hives or an annoyance or wanting to commit an act of violence. You know, it depends. What's your favorite pizza topping? Well, on Friday it's extra heavy cheese and onions, but on Saturday it's pepperoni. And I thought this has always annoyed me, this issue of favorites, and I have to address this with people. And at one point I thought I have to come up with a simple answer of why I don't like favorites, and it was as follows. See if you can detect the problem in this response. Well, I have no favorites at all except with respect to my wife.
She's your favorite wife?
This is a problem. Unless you have a harem, this is a problematic statement. So I did think, what are my favorites? And I thought, well, my favorite novel is The Napoleon of Notting Hill. And my favorite passage in Chesterton's historical works is the passage on the Punic Wars. But my favorite single, but I thought I can't read these, but you two were rather good at picking a section and reading it. So I thought, no, I know. Every year I teach the seniors at Thomas More College, Man Alive. It's the last thing that they actually read is Chesterton's novel, Man Alive. And the first, depends on the edition you have, the first page or two is, it makes me cry when I read it. It's about It's about the. Is that good? Thank you, Mein Führer. It's about the wind and the Holy Spirit, and it's just different kinds of people that are despairing and need the Holy Spirit. And it's beautiful. It's beautifully written. And my end of semester this year was a little bit messy, and so I don't know what happened to my copy of Man Alive, so I couldn't read that page. So, I am working right now on trying to come to an understanding of Chesterton and Belloc on America. I have to take my glasses off in order to read. And we're on the verge of the 250th anniversary of our sovereignty being recognized, our independence, however you want to understand 2026 coming up. And so I've been thinking about this a lot. So I've been poking around in Chesterton on that, and there's a passage that I might read to you, but I want to read this passage. This drives Dale insane. He always says, pick one poem, and I always try to pick three. So we'll see. How much time do we have? Good, thanks. So in Chesterton, how many of you watched the Troubadours? So you remember the last episode. We were flagging along about flags, and I'm shocked that Dale did not make reference to this essay that was written in 1907 entitled The Flag of Europe. And Chesterton is responding to an article where someone named William Archer, I don't know much about Archer, is making a sort of proposal for a united Europe, and there should be a sort of a flag of the European Union. So I'll just read this first paragraph because it's so wonderfully Chestertonian, and I think it says many things about his vision of the good life. In the Albany Review, Mr. William Archer throws out the excellent fancy of a flag for the United States of Europe. He quotes Ibsen as having also said that the 34 fatherlands of Europe are ridiculous. Quote, North America is content with one, or at the present with two. End quote. Mr. Archer does not desire that this European flag should destroy the existing national flags, but only that it should be used side by side with them, just as an American admits states' rights, but also the rights of the Union that is above the states. In this personal and poetical sense, I'm prepared not only to accept Mr. Archer's flag, but to suggest a great number of others. I am a European and very proud of Europe, just as I am an Englishman, very proud of England. I am also a vertebrate and prepared to defend my order against crustaceans. And a Londoner, prepared to defend my city against Birmingham. I am a mammal and a biped, and a citizen of Battersea. I should like to wave flags in all these capacities. A vertebrate flag, adorned with a decorative backbone. A human flag, adorned with a heraldic man. A Battersea flag, the lost dog rampant. A mammalian flag, a biped flag, cut in the shape of a pair of trousers. And among others, of course, a European flag. I should like all these flags, flapping objects, to be stuck all over me on serious occasions, such as my death, and to go down with all flags flying. Many will regret to hear that this collection would include brightly colored banners expressive of my adhesion to the Liberal Party, the Christian religion, and any private club of optimists, Paulines, fat men, men with 3 names, short-sighted persons, etc., to which I might happen to belong. So that's just gratuitous. All right, so here's something that I want to read that struck me as I was doing this work on Chesterton and America, that I leave you with because it's one of these passages in Chesterton where I read it, and this for me is a high watermark of a writer. I read it and I don't simply capitulate. I read it and I think, I'm not sure that I agree with all of that, but it's so overwhelming. There's certain truths to it that it just sticks with me and I have to struggle with it. There's a lot of Chesterton like that. Belloc, to be honest, is more connatural to me. I sort of read Belloc and say, yes, we agree. Chesterton, I have to come back to him in a good way, and I wrestle with him a bit more. And this is an example of the passage where I think he's got certain things wrong, but he's got the best things right. This is from his 1918 essay called The Two Feasts of Freedom. The essay in its entirety is about the proximity of the 4th of July and Bastille Day. And so the essay goes back and forth meditating on, from an Englishman's point of view, is there anything to think about with respect to the 4th of July and Bastille Day? And he argues very much so in both cases. Now, the particular paragraph I'm going to read talks more about the French Revolution, which I am troubled by, and Chesterton is not. which is exactly what I mean by there are certain things about Chesterton which I am not convinced he has right, and yet he sees something true, even when I might disagree with him on particulars. A revolution is the refusal of a people to die to its laws. A revolution is the refusal of a people to die to its laws. There's the higher truth from my point of view. Now some particulars. It may be said, to come rightly, when law itself has become lawless. It is often said that the French Revolution led men to an anarchy, but it is often forgotten that it certainly led men out of an anarchy. For an autocracy that has broken down is itself an anarchy. The worst sort of lawlessness is a tangle of laws that are broken like threads simply because they are in a tangle. Arbitrary order comes from nowhere and go nowhere, nobody either tracing them back to a responsible person or tracing them forward to a practical result. That is what happened in the last paralysis of the French monarchy. And that is what is happening today in the last paralysis of the English parliamentary system. The point of the French historic celebration is that the French people refuse to perish in this paralysis. They cut away the network of a dead nervous system from the body of the nation, and the nation, passing through an instant like that of death, lived again. The simplicity, one might almost say the innocence, of this first insurrection is fitly symbolized in the impetuous act of mere men in the street who suddenly stormed and took a historic house of captivity standing in the center of the city. It is a mark of all revolutions that they seem, in the vision of history, arrested in some such single and almost allegorical gesture. So in the American Revolution, celebrated last week, tradition has fastened on the flinging of tea into Boston Harbor. And a sort of practical joke has remained as a parable. The Americans rebelled against a comparatively light tax, and the French besieged a comparatively empty prison. But the very fact that such popular actions are as vain as ritual show that they are as deep as religion. They are done in the dreadful hour when it becomes necessary to make all things new. So I leave you with that passage from the two Feasts of Freedom. I am now a grandparent. So there was a period of time where I thought in terms of my life, and then that kind of receded a little bit, and I had children, and I thought a little bit about my children. And now I think about not only my children's life, but my grandchildren's life, which is interesting. It means that as I've gotten older, I have a longer vision of a lifespan, if you see what I mean. And that's not necessarily always joyful. This morning, I said to one of my daughters when she came down, having read the news on and off for the last 2 weeks, which was somewhat interesting, I'm so sorry that you will have no experience of the America that your mother and I lived in. I'm not a person who likes revolutions at all. But I am given a strange hope by Chesterton's understanding of the ultimate good that can come during revolutionary periods. This is why I'm usually the closer, because I tend to be more sober than my brothers in this respect.
Sober in that respect. Yes. Okay. Thank you, William. God bless you. I think I'll stand. Could you give me this one here?
How come Dale gets to use the podium?
It's not that how come Dale gets to, it's Dale chose to. It's not about getting. It's not getting. I want to thank my brother Troubadours, and I'm going to read this. Much of our modern difficulty in religion and other things arises from this, that we confuse the word indefinable with the word vague. If someone speaks of a spiritual fact as indefinable, we promptly picture something misty, a cloud with indeterminate edges. But this is an error, even in commonplace logic. The thing that cannot be defined is the first thing, the primary fact. It is our arms and legs, our pots and pans that are indefinable. The indefinable is the indisputable. The man next door is indefinable because he is too actual to be defined. And there are some to whom spiritual things have the same fierce and practical proximity, some to whom God is too actual to be defined. Does anyone know where that passage comes from? That is the opening paragraph of Chesterton's book on Charles Dickens. Possibly one of his top 5 books. A book that is sadly out of print. Bring it back. And I didn't say your favorite, I said a favorite. I'm going to read an abridged version of this chapter because it's going to express Chesterton's admiration for Charles Dickens and why. And Dickens was without question the most influential writer on Chesterton. And I think that in his admiration of Dickens, he reveals why we admire G.K. Chesterton. There's a third class of primary terms. They are popular expressions which everyone uses and no one can explain, which the wise men will accept with reverence as he reverences desire or darkness or any elemental thing. The prigs of the debating club will demand that he should define his terms, and being a wise man, he will flatly refuse. The first inexplicable term is the most important term of all. The word that has no definition is the word that has no substitute. Precisely because the word is indefinable, the word is indispensable. The word great does mean something, and the test of its actuality is to be found by noting how instinctively and decisively we do apply it to some men and not to others. In reply to this question, why have we no great men today? Many modern explanations are offered. Advertisement, cigarette smoking, the decay of religion, the decay of agriculture, too much humanitarianism, too little humanitarianism, the fact that people are educated insufficiently, the fact that they are educated at all. All these reasons are given. If I give my own explanation, it is that from the reformer is required a simplicity of surprise. He must have a faculty of a violent and virgin astonishment. It is not enough that he should think injustice distressing. He should think injustice absurd, an anomaly in existence, a matter less for tears than for shattering laughter. On the other hand, the pessimists at the end of the century, meaning the 19th, could hardly curse even the blackest thing, for they could hardly see it against its black and eternal background. Nothing was bad because everything was bad. There's a great man who makes every man feel small. But the real great man is the man who makes every man feel great. And almost without exception, all the great men have come out of this atmosphere of equality. Great men may make despotisms, but democracies make great men. The other main factory of heroes besides a revolution is a religion. And a religion, again, is a thing which by its nature does not think of men as more or less valuable, but of men as all intensely and painfully valuable, a democracy of eternal danger. For religion, all men are equal, as all pennies are equal, because the only value they have is that they bear the image of the king. This fact has been quite insufficiently observed in the study of religious heroes. Piety produces intellectual greatness precisely because piety is in itself quite indifferent to intellectual greatness. The strength of Cromwell was that he cared for religion, but the strength of religion is that it did not care for Cromwell. How then are we to answer this simple question? Why have we no great men? We have no great men chiefly because we are always looking for them. We are connoisseurs of greatness. Connoisseurs can never be great. We are fastidious, that is, we are small. When Diogenes went about with a lantern looking for an honest man, I'm afraid he had very little time to be honest himself. And when everybody goes about on his hands and knees looking for a great man to worship, he's making sure that one man at any rate shall not be great. Now, the error of Diogenes is evident. The error of Diogenes lay in the fact that he omitted to notice that every man is both an honest man and a dishonest man. Diogenes looked for his honest man inside every crypt and cavern, but he never thought of looking inside the thief. That is where the founder of Christianity found the honest man. He found him on a gibbet and promised him paradise. Just as Christianity looked for the honest man inside the thief, democracy looked for the wise man inside the fool. It encouraged the fool to be wise. Exaggeration is the definition of art. That Dickens understood. Dickens overstrains and overstates a mood our period does not understand. The truth he exaggerates is exactly this old revolution's sense of infinite opportunity and boisterous brotherhood. We have a boisterous brotherhood. I believe myself that this braver world of his will certainly return. For I believe that it is bound up with the realities like morning and the spring. But for those who beyond remedy regard it as an error, I put this appeal before any observations on Dickens. First, let us sympathize, if only for an instant, with the hopes of the Dickens period, with that cheerful trouble of change. If democracy has disappointed you, do not think of it as a burst bubble, but at least as a broken heart, as an old love affair. Do not sneer at a time when the creed of humanity was on its honeymoon. Treat it with the dreadful reverence that is due to youth. For you, perhaps, a drearier philosophy has covered and eclipsed the earth. The fierce poet of the Middle Ages wrote, "Abandon hope, all you who enter here over the gates of the lower world." The emancipated poets of today have written it over the gates of this world. But if we are to understand the story which follows, We must erase that apocalyptic writing, if only for an hour. We must recreate the faith of our fathers, if only as an artistic atmosphere. If then you are a pessimist in reading this story, forego for a little while the pleasures of pessimism. Dream for one mad moment that the grass is green. Unlearn that sinister learning that you think so clear. Deny that deadly knowledge that you think you know. Surrender the very flower of your culture. Give up the very jewel of your pride. Abandon hopelessness, all you who enter here. Today. Hello, everybody. All right. Today is a special day. It is William Fahey's birthday. And we are going to sing happy birthday to him right now. But before we do, we're also going to acknowledge that today is Vicky Darkey's birthday as well. And we're going to sing happy birthday to her as well.
Come on up here, Vicky.
Yeah, Vicky, come on up here.
Come on up here. The great Victoria Darkey.
Look at that. That's okay. And there's going to be cake. You know. And so we're going to sing. And I should also add, even though today's not his actual birthday, it is the year of his 150th birthday. So we should sing happy birthday to Chesterton as well. So let's start with our kids here. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear William
And
Vicky,
Victoria.
and G.K. Chesterton. Happy birthday to you. Oh, look. All right.
Fahey, where are you? Right. I went to go get you some old granddad. Yes, but I got lost. I managed to find a cigar and some wine, but so it was a total loss.
Not a total loss.
No, not a total. Oh, hello. I'm sorry. I turned my back to you. All right, well, goodbye. No. I knew it. Something that has
Speech.
Right, well, I'm going to do my best. Hello. There's no smoking. No smoking.
Oh, that's good enough, yeah.
That's all right. It's good to see you. It's good to be seen, especially after you're dead. Good evening, my dear friends. What a distinct pleasure it is to see you all in this city of brotherly love. Although I must say, it is a little embarrassing to be the object of so much attention. Although I realize it is very difficult for me to go unnoticed when I am taking up so much space. But I want to thank you, all of you, first of all, for the birthday wishes, especially since I missed my birthday. I think I also missed my funeral as well. Nevertheless, the first fact about the celebration of a birthday is that it is a way of affirming, defiantly and even flamboyantly, that it is a good thing to be alive. And it is the most generous gift from our Lord that I am here to celebrate with you a birthday with my friends who are so generous and have been so generous to me for quite a long time. Perhaps we are such good friends because we are united perhaps by a creed, my American friends. America is the first country in the world to be founded on a creed. Yet it is not merely a creed that unites men. Nay, the difference of a creed also unites men, as long as it is a clear difference. Take, for instance, my dear friend Bernard Shaw. Most people either say that they agree with Bernard Shaw, or that they do not understand him. I am the only person who understands him, but I do not disagree with him. I always disagree with him. I have disputed violently with the man for over 20 years about sex, about sin, about the sacraments, about personal points of honor, about all the sacred and delicate essentials of our existence. You see, it is necessary for me to disagree with him as much as I do, to admire him as much as I do. I am very proud of him as a foe, even more than as a friend. People generally quarrel because they cannot argue. And it is an extraordinary thing how many people in the modern world cannot argue. That is why there are so many quarrels always breaking out and going on, never without ever ending naturally. For it is in society that men quarrel, but it is in solitude that we forgive each other. I had a few things I wanted to say, but it occurs to me that we can only turn hate to love by understanding what are the things that men have loved. Nor is it necessary to ask men to hate their loves in order to love one another. Just as you said the other, as two grocers who are most likely to be reconciled when they remember that they are two fathers, or two patriots who are likely to be reconciled when they remember, if just for a moment, that they are two patriots in the same story. I wish we could all, at times, think of each other as characters that we love in real life, as characters in a story. There are a great many human souls whom we should accept more kindly and even appreciate more clearly if we simply thought of them as people in a story. Take my friend Hilaire Belloc. Yes, Joe. Belloc had more to do with making me who I am than I had to do with making him Belloc. When I first met Belloc, he was introduced to me by a friend, and he remarked to this friend that he was in low spirits. But his low spirits are so much more uproarious and enlivening than anyone else's high spirits could possibly be. He talked through the night, and when he left in it a glowing track of good things. Colonel Repington, you know who? No. All right. Colonel Repington wrote a set of memoirs. And he tells a very amusing story about Belloc and myself. It appears that one night we were talking so much at dinner that an air raid occurred, and we didn't notice. I confess an English weakness that I was flattered by that. Do you know, a queer and mad notion seems to have gotten into the modern head that if you mix everybody and everything up, anyhow, some way, that the mixture may be called unity, and the unity will be called peace. It is, I suppose, that if you break down all the doors and walls so that there is no domesticity, there will be nothing but friendship. However, comradeship is quite different than friendship. For friendship implies individuality, and comradeship implies the swamping of individuality. Friends are better for being two, but comradeship is better for being 2 million. One may readily observe that a joke between two may be more entertaining than a joke between 2 million, eh? Well, so you see, it is humor itself that is necessary, and maybe the most necessary element of friendship. Humor can get in under the door, while seriousness is still fumbling with the handle. Well, humor is meant in a literal sense to make a game of man. That is, to dethrone him from his official dignity and hunt him like a game. It is meant to remind us, human beings, that we have things about us that are ungainly and ludicrous, as the nose of an elephant or the neck of a giraffe. If laughter does not touch a sort of fundamental folly, it does not do its duty in bringing us back to an enormous and original simplicity. Laughter has something in common with the ancient winds of faith and inspiration. It unfreezes pride and unwinds secrecy. It makes men forget themselves when they are in the presence of something far greater than themselves. Or, as the phrase jokes, something they can't resist. If the whole world were suddenly stricken with a sense of humor, we would find ourselves all mechanically fulfilling the Sermon on the Mount. But I'm sorry. Perhaps the joke is on me. I've been babbling away here for such a long time, I may be off topic. Well, you know, a man doesn't know what he is saying until he knows what he is not saying. In closing, the critical thing regarding this topic of friendship that I began is that only friendliness produces friendship. And we must look far deeper into the soul of a man for the thing that produces friendliness. For in truth, my dear and generous friends, men and women are all in the same boat on a stormy sea, and we owe to each other a terrible loyalty and a tragic loyalty. And with that, I wish Mr. Fahey happy birthday, and Victoria Darkey, and all of you, and thank you so much for letting me have some of your time. I don't get to talk to too many people in the afterlife. God bless you. Happy birthday.
Mr. Chesterton has agreed to stay and pose for some pictures if you want to have your picture taken with him, but you're all welcome to have birthday cake, so go out into the lobby and meet Mr. Chesterton and have some birthday cake. And here's one last announcement.
Yeah, we'll be back here for night prayer in just 5 minutes, so if you can forestall your birthday cake and pray the liturgy, that is welcome to do. But it's a Catholic conference, right? We're testing you, so you have to figure that out for yourself, whatever you decide.
Yeah, that's right.
See you all tomorrow morning, at least. God bless.